I've seen people die. It's part of the job. I felt bones break under my hands during compressions. I've called time of death before the clock hit midnight. I've whispered, "You're okay," to strangers while watching their heart rates flatline. But the moment Nathan Blackwell was rolled into my ear, everything in me locked up. The name wouldn't come until later. But the face, I knew the face instantly. The sharp-cut jawline, the faint scar under his chin, the signature midnight black hair. The man on the stretcher wasn't just another cardiac arrest. He was the man who once signed me out of existence. And now he was dying right in front of me. Male, 30s, suspected myocardial infarction. The paramedic shouted, "BP crashing." No response. "We're losing him. Crash cart. Oxygen. Now." I snapped into motion, adrenaline overriding panic. Defib pads. Go. It took everything in me to keep my hands steady as I leaned over him. Sweat soaked his $1,000 shirt. His lips were blue, his pulse, a whisper. I pressed the mask over his face, then reached to adjust his head and froze. It was him, Nathan Blackwell, tech mogul, Wall Street's golden predator, billionaire CEO of Blackwell Capital Group. The man who once sat across a glass table, cold eyes unreadable, and signed the termination letter that ended my corporate career 5 years ago. He hadn't even looked at me. Now he couldn't. His eyes were shut, chest still, seconds from death. "Dr. Mendez," I yelled, starting compressions. My hands slammed onto his chest. 1, 2, 3. I could have let him go. I should have let him go. But I didn't, because that's not who I am. Because sometimes, the person who breaks you becomes the person you save. When he woke up 2 days later, I was standing over him, clipboard in hand, heart pounding like a drum. He blinked against the harsh hospital light. "You're at Northcrest Medical Center," I told him. "You went into full cardiac arrest. You're stable now." He looked at me, right at me, and said, "Have we met before?" I wanted to laugh, or scream, or maybe both. Instead, I forced a calm smile. "I work here a lot. You might have seen me around." He stared longer than necessary. "You seem familiar." I dropped my gaze. "People say that sometimes. But inside I was on fire." He didn't remember me. Of course he didn't. To him, I was just one name in a sea of employees. A line item. A problem solved with ink. But to me, that signature had cost everything. My reputation. My income. My sense of self. Now I was Nurse Sienna Clark. Back then, I'd been Sienna Delaney, junior strategist at Blackwell Capital. Until the quarter imploded, a report went wrong, and I was made the scapegoat for something I hadn't done. Marshall Langston, the COO, had slipped the final numbers. I caught it, flagged it, warned them. They ignored me, and Nathan signed my exit letter without a word. That same day in the hospital, he demanded his phone. "I need my assistant," he said. "I've been offline for 2 days. That's an eternity." I folded my arms. "Your heart flatlined. You nearly died. Maybe let someone else run the company for 5 minutes." His eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what's at stake." "Oh, I understand," I said, voice cold now. "More than you know." He didn't catch it, but later, when I came back into his room, and he was firing off emails, I snapped. "You ruined my life," I said flatly. 5 years ago, you signed a letter that ended everything for me." He stared. "I was Sienna Delaney," I continued. "Junior strategy. Q3 report. Langston's file error. I flagged it. He pushed it through anyway. You never asked questions. Just fired me. I lost my job, my savings, my future." His face went white. "I had to move back in with my mother. I worked night shifts, buried myself in student debt to retrain as a nurse. And now," I leaned in, "now I'm the one keeping your heart beating." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. "I didn't," he started. "I never knew." "Of course you didn't," I said. "You didn't bother to look." I left the room before he could respond. That night, I saw the lights still on in his room. He was staring at a tablet, face ghost pale, swiping through HR files. He looked up when I entered. "You were right," he said quietly. It was Langston. I found the memo. You flagged it. He covered it. I never read the file. I just signed it. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. Because sorry doesn't rebuild a career. Doesn't refund 5 years. But maybe, just maybe, it was a start. I couldn't sleep that night. And judging by the light under his door, neither could he. I wasn't sure what haunted him more, the heart attack or the truth. But I knew this. The man I saved wasn't the same one who had destroyed me. Or maybe, he wasn't anymore. And that terrified me even more than the day he fired me. It's a strange thing, watching a man break in silence. Most people assume power shatters loudly, that billionaires fall with headlines, lawsuits, chaos. But Nathan Blackwell, the man who once ruined me, crumbled quietly. In a hospital bed, under soft lights, with nothing but regret on his breath. And I was the one who lit the match. After I told him the truth about who I was, who he had made me, he didn't speak for hours. He stared at the ceiling like it might open up and swallow him. I didn't stay to comfort him. I wasn't that kind of woman anymore. But that night, I didn't sleep, not because of rage, not even because of grief. Because I had seen something in his eyes I hadn't expected. Something that looked a lot like shame. The next morning, he was different. He didn't ask for his phone. Didn't call his assistant. Didn't demand protein smoothies and business reports. He just sat up slowly. And said, "Sienna, may I speak with you?" He remembered my name. Not Clark. Not Moore. Not nurse. Sienna. He gestured to the chair beside his bed. I hesitated, then sat. Nathan took a slow breath. Like every word would cost him something. I stayed up most of the night reading through HR records. Memos. Internal reviews. Things I should have read 5 years ago. I didn't respond. The memo was there. He said, "From Langston, dated 2 weeks after your dismissal." He admitted fault. I clenched my jaw. I already knew, but hearing it from him still burned. "You were right. You flagged the error. You were ignored. And you signed my execution," I said, my voice tight, without even reading the file. He flinched. "Yes. I was loyal, smart, young, but not stupid. You knew my face, Nathan. You saw me in meetings. Elevators. I idolized you." He looked away. "I know. I remember you now. You always carried too many binders. Asked good questions. Smiled at the janitors. That was before the humiliation. Before I was escorted out with my box while Langston poured scotch and laughed." Nathan's knuckles whitened. He said it was handled. I believed him. I didn't double-check. I was chasing a deal in Singapore. "You were just a name on a page." A pause. "That's what I was to you," I said quietly. "A name on a page." He didn't argue. He didn't excuse. He just said, "I'm sorry." Not a corporate apology. Not the performative kind. A real one. And that, God help me, made it worse. Over the next few days, I tried to avoid him. But Northcrest isn't a palace. It's a clinic. And the man had nowhere else to go. He read every book in our sad little library cart. Biographies, leadership, a memoir by a trauma nurse. He started asking questions about patients, about our clinic, our funding, our problems. And he listened. Really listened. I didn't trust it at first. Nathan Blackwell had once been a machine, a shark in Tom Ford. But now, he was sitting in paper scrubs, helping me update supply orders and asking how many volunteers we had for the flu drive. It didn't feel like pity. It felt like penance. One night, the power went out. Spring storm, heavy rain. The emergency lights kicked in with a dull flicker. I was checking on patients with a flashlight when I slipped on water near the recovery wing. My foot went out, the world tilted, and I braced for impact. But I never hit the ground. 2 arms caught me mid-fall. Strong, warm, Nathan. I looked up into those eyes, haunted, tired, and too familiar, and forgot how to breathe. "You should be in bed," I whispered, still half in his arms. "I heard you fall," he said, and I couldn't sit still again. Not this time. My hand had curled unconsciously into his t-shirt. His fingers gripped my waist like the earth might swallow us. I stepped back, finally, flushed, embarrassed, alive. Let's get you back before Dr. Patel finds out and sticks a monitor in your leg. He actually laughed, not the clipped, cynical smirk I remembered from the boardroom. A real laugh, unpolished, warm. I hated how much I liked the sound. Days passed, something changed. He asked if he could shadow our community clinic meetings. Started offering strategy notes. Asked to speak with donors. With my permission. He wasn't playing savior. He was showing up. One morning, Dr. Patel handed me a manila envelope. "Congratulations," she said. "Your community care proposal, the one that got rejected 6 months ago. It's been approved." I froze. No, it can't be. They turned it down. Well, someone resubmitted it under a partner org. Anonymous donor. Fast-tracked. Fully funded. I didn't need to ask who. That night, I stood outside his room. Folder in hand. He was reading. Calm. Changed. "You did this," I said. He didn't deny it. "I didn't want it to be a favor," Nathan said. "I wanted it to be right. I didn't ask for this." "I know. That's why I did it." Tears burned behind my eyes. I swallowed them. He looked down. "I can't change the past. But I can help build something now." And somehow, that felt bigger than sorry. We started working together after that. Not just in passing. In purpose. He helped me structure outreach programs. Connect to donors. Launch mobile care units. He even gave a public interview. Calling out the broken medical pipeline. It was like watching a skyscraper become a shelter. He filled in my blind spots. I softened his edges. He stopped being the man who broke me. And started becoming the one helping me rise. But then the call came. Thursday morning. I saw his face when the phone rang. Saw the name on the screen before he answered. Global Reach Board Chair. The voice on the other end was calm. Polished. "Nathan, the CEO seat is open. We want you back." He hung up. Then he climbed the stairs to the rooftop, where I always went when the world got too loud. The sky was still gray, but the city below pulsed with light. He stood beside me, quiet. "They want me back," he said. "Full power, full control, all of it." I didn't react. "Congratulations," I said. "But it means leaving New York. Leaving this. You." Now I turned. He looked broken, but whole. "I've made decisions for logic, strategy, shareholders. But this," he gestured to the clinic. "To me, this is the first thing that's felt real." Then he said the words that made me cry without shame. "I don't want to build empires anymore. I want to build something that heals. And I want to do it with you." That's the thing about reckoning. It doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes, it comes with quiet hands, soft truths, and a man choosing something messy and good over something safe and gold-plated. Some shifts are easy to measure. Temperature, heart rate, income. But others, they're quieter. Like how someone stops calling you, "nurse," and starts saying your name. Like how silence between two people no longer feels awkward, but necessary. Like how the man who once signed your career away now shows up early to staff meetings, with coffee. After Nathan turned down the CEO seat at Global Reach, things didn't magically become perfect. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was more like a quiet truce. He stayed in New York. Quietly. No press release. No interviews. Just one deliberate decision. To walk away from the boardroom and toward something harder to define. Us. We never labeled it. Not yet. But something was happening. We started building the outreach program together. I had the heart. He had the structure. I saw patients. He saw systems. And somehow, we met in the middle. Nathan helped secure 3 mobile medical units. Organized donors. Hired a logistics manager. All under my lead. Never above it. He asked questions. Real ones. What would help you sleep at night? How do we make sure no one gets missed? Who do you trust to lead when we scale? This was not the Nathan I remembered. The man in my memory calculated ROI in real time. He once cut an entire team before lunch and took a private jet to Bermuda by dinner. But now, Now he stayed late to answer grant emails and hand-loaded a van with donated supplies. He wore jeans, sometimes forgot to shave. Once, he even spilled coffee on a proposal draft, and laughed. And just like that, the unthinkable happened. I started to trust him. Not blindly, not quickly, but truly. One Friday evening, we were reviewing floor plans for the satellite clinic when our hands touched. Just briefly, fingers brushing over a blueprint. Mid-sentence, we both froze. I looked up, so did he. The silence stretched long, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was electric and terrifying. He pulled his hand back first. But I felt it, like a spark hiding in my sleeve. We never talked about that moment. But it changed everything. After that, our conversations grew softer at the edges. We shared more than numbers. I told him about my dad, how he died from a stroke in a waiting room no one had time to monitor. He told me about his mother, how she worked 3 jobs so he could attend MIT. He said she never got to see him make it. She'd be proud now, I said once. He shook his head. She'd be proud of this. Not the suits. This. The shift between us was gradual, but powerful. We had lunch breaks that turned into hour-long debates about ethics in healthcare. He let a local college intern shadow him for a week and asked me for feedback on how he managed. We laughed more. We lingered longer. And sometimes, I caught him watching me, not like a CEO scans a subordinate, but like a man seeing a woman who once stood in his blind spot, now front and center. But not everything changed. Some nights I still jolted awake, remembering the day I was fired. The hallway whispers. The way the elevator door closed. The feeling of disappearing. Nathan never asked for forgiveness. Not in words. He knew better than to expect it. But he was earning something else. Presence. And that meant more than any apology. One day, I caught him standing outside the pediatric room, watching a little girl named Noelle draw stick figures with a nurse. He didn't say anything, but he smiled, and I knew something was shifting in him, too. This wasn't about redemption anymore. This was about becoming. That weekend, we hosted our first community health fair. It was small, held in the park across from Northcrest. Folding tables, free screenings, local vendors. I was knee-deep in blood pressure cuffs and glucose strips when I heard a familiar voice say, "You need water, and 10 minutes off your feet." Nathan, holding a bottle, wearing jeans and a clinic volunteer badge. "You're not my boss," I teased. "No," he said, grinning, "I'm your backup." He guided me to the shade, sat beside me. For a while, we said nothing. Then, he turned to me. "I think I'm finally starting to understand what matters." I met his gaze. "And what's that?" He didn't flinch. "People who tell the truth. Who fight for what's right. Who show up when it's inconvenient." Then, quietly, "People like you." I looked away. The lump in my throat wasn't going anywhere. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For not pretending anymore." That night, we closed down the fair together. He helped pack boxes, took pictures with volunteers, said thank you in 3 different languages. And as we stood by the last van, under string lights and stars, I said the one thing I'd been afraid to. "I don't know what this is between us." He nodded slowly. "Me either. But I know it's not nothing." I added. "No," he said, voice low, "it's definitely not nothing." He didn't try to kiss me. Didn't reach for my hand. He just stood beside me. Still, present. And that was enough. Because sometimes, the biggest shift isn't loud. It's not explosive or dramatic or made for TV. Sometimes, the biggest shift is 2 people learning to trust again. In silence. In softness. In steps too small to measure, but too real to ignore. There's always a cost. Sometimes it's visible, a number, a bill, a burned bridge. Other times, it comes later, disguised as silence. Or an email you regret answering. Or the person you never stopped loving walking away when you finally had the courage to stay. Nathan and I had built something fragile and real. It wasn't labeled, it wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And then came the call that reminded me, he still had an empire waiting. It was a Thursday, late morning. The clinic was buzzing with staff and community leaders preparing for a fundraising brunch. Nathan had been up since sunrise, reviewing donor packets and printing name tags. He didn't complain, didn't disappear. Then his phone rang. He stepped outside to answer, but I saw the name before he did. Richard Cade, board chair, Global Reach Capital, the man who used to call Nathan the spine of the machine. 15 minutes later, Nathan came back inside, quiet, pale. I didn't ask, I didn't need to. He didn't mention it during the event. He shook hands, smiled, helped an elderly woman fill out her blood pressure form. But I could feel it. The weight of a decision pressing down behind his eyes. That evening, I found him on the rooftop, where the city's glow never reached too far, and the silence held space for hard conversations. He stood at the edge, hands in his pockets, watching the lights of Midtown blink like heart monitors. You look like someone offered you heaven, but it comes with a cage, I said softly. He turned, smiled faintly. They offered me the CEO seat, he said. Back at Global Reach. I nodded once. Full package. Everything. Board approval. No transition period. They want me next month. I crossed my arms. And what do you want? He didn't answer right away. I used to think I wanted that chair more than anything. He said, power, legacy, control. Now, I'm not sure I want to be the man who sits in that room anymore. He looked at me then. Really looked. I'm tired of signing papers that hurt people. I'm tired of building things that don't matter to anyone but stockholders. But I also know I'm good at it. And people are waiting. He didn't say it out loud. But I was one of those people. Waiting. For what he would choose. For whether he would choose me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd had since he came back into my life. Every shift, every change. I wasn't angry, just scared. Because when you've been burned before, even warmth feels dangerous. The next morning, he was gone. No note, no text, just a message left with Dr. Patel that he had to clear his head. I told myself not to panic, but part of me already knew where he'd gone. Back to the city, to the glass towers, to the people who only used first names when money was involved. He was gone for 3 days. I didn't hear from him, didn't call, didn't cry, but when he walked through the clinic doors again, sunburned from a rooftop board meeting and still wearing a navy blazer, I nearly forgot how to breathe. He walked straight to me, no hesitation, no crowd, and he said, I told them no, just like that. I told them I couldn't lead a company that doesn't know the value of showing up. I told them I found something worth staying for. He paused. I told him about you. I didn't move, didn't speak, because there are moments when the heart hears what the mouth can't say. But he wasn't finished. I'm not giving up everything. He said, I'm trading up power for purpose, titles for time. I don't want to win board votes if it means losing the one person who made me want to become someone better. Tears welled in my eyes. But I didn't look away. You're sure? I asked. I've never been more sure. 3 weeks later, we opened the doors of the first permanent Blackwell Clark Community Wellness Center. The ribbon fluttered in the breeze. Local reporters filmed. Kids chased balloons in the courtyard. Nathan stood beside me in a charcoal suit. No tie, no script. When it was his turn to speak, he adjusted the mic and said, I built an empire once. But this feels like the first time I've built something that matters. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and music played, he pulled me aside behind the stage. I have one more decision to make, he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small, dark blue velvet box. I gasped. He opened it. Simple, elegant, timeless. Sienna Clark, he said, dropping to one knee. You saved my life, not just with your hands, but with your grace. You showed me how to be more than what I built. Will you marry me? Tears rolled down my cheeks as I nodded. Yes, I whispered, then louder, as the crowd realized what was happening. Yes, Nathan, yes. People clapped, cheered, even Dr. Patel cried. But none of it mattered. Because in that moment, nothing existed but the man who had once forgotten my name, now giving me his forever. Later that night, we sat in the back of the empty clinic. Lights low, fingers entwined. I leaned my head on his shoulder and said, "If I hadn't saved you that night." He kissed the top of my head. "You saved me more than once," he whispered. "You saved me from the man I thought I had to be." They say every love story has its test. I used to think ours had already survived the hardest one. A firing, a second chance, a public proposal. But I was wrong, because sometimes, the hardest part isn't falling in love. It's facing the world once you do. The video went viral. A billionaire CEO turned clinic partner, dropping to one knee in front of a health center ribbon cutting. The media devoured it. Billionaire announces boardroom for love and medicine. Nathan Blackwell engaged to former employee he once fired. From scandal to soulmates. They twisted our story into something slick and scandalous. The headlines weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. They didn't know what it cost us to get here. And they sure as hell didn't know what was coming next. 3 days after the proposal, we were ambushed outside the clinic. Photographers, reporters, boom mics in our faces. Nathan, are you giving up the company for guilt or for love? Sienna, were you sleeping with your boss when he fired you? Are you trying to rebuild your career through a marriage license? Nathan pulled me close. No comment. But I saw his jaw tighten. And I felt mine crack. That night, my past found me too. An email, no subject line. From Marshall Langston. My stomach dropped. The man who let me take the fall for his mistake. The man who raised a glass the night I was escorted out of Blackwell Capital with a cardboard box and a tear-streaked face. He wanted to meet, said he had a business proposition. I didn't reply, but I didn't sleep, either. Nathan was furious when he found out. Langston's poison, he said, whatever he wants, it's manipulation. I know that, I told him. Then why are you even considering it? Because I'm tired of ghosts whispering behind my back. He stared at me, hurt flickering just beneath his anger. You think I can't protect you? I think I need to protect myself, I said. He turned away, and for the first time in weeks, we went to bed not touching. The next morning, I met Langston, neutral ground, a coffee shop in Midtown. He was still sharp-suited, still smug, but the edges had dulled. I could tell he'd taken a few hits since Nathan stepped down. Still righteous. Sienna, he said as I sat. Still think integrity makes you untouchable. I think truth makes you dangerous, I replied. He smiled. That's cute. Listen, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to make a deal. I didn't reply. He leaned in. Marry him. Take his name. Great. But let's not pretend you're not standing on ground I helped destroy. So if you want peace, if you want the media storm to die down, I suggest you help me leverage this little romance into a PR strategy. My blood went cold. You're insane. I'm practical. I stood. You can tell your board that I may have fallen once, but I got up. And now, I'm not playing anyone's scapegoat again. He raised an eyebrow. We'll see. When I got back to the clinic, Nathan was waiting. I didn't speak, just walked into his arms and let the truth fall out. He listened, didn't interrupt, didn't rage, just held me. I'm sorry, he whispered, that I ever let a man like him anywhere near your story. I'm not afraid of him, I said, but I am afraid of what happens if we let him write our next chapter. Nathan nodded, and then, like something clicked, he turned to me and said, let's control the narrative. The next morning, we called a press conference. No PR team, no prepared statements, just us. Nathan stood behind the mic and said everything I never thought I'd hear a man like him say. I was wrong, he began. I once signed a dismissal I didn't read. It cost someone her career, her peace, her sense of safety. He looked at me. I fell, and when I did, she saved me, without hesitation, without pride, and without vengeance. He paused. I'm not here to redeem myself. I'm here because I finally learned how to lead by showing up. By listening, by loving. Then he stepped back, and I took the mic. My name is Sienna Clark, I said. Some of you knew me as a file, a headline, a story. I looked directly into the cameras. But I'm not a victim. I'm not a gold digger. I'm not here to rewrite the past. I'm here to build a future. A breath. And I'm not ashamed of who I chose to love. Afterward, the internet buzzed with reactions. Some called it brave, others called it reckless. But the important part, the story was ours now. And no one could take that away again. Later that night, as we sat on the clinic steps watching dusk fall, Nathan reached for my hand. "Still sure about this?" he asked. I leaned into him. "More than ever. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after the storm. It doesn't come with fanfare or applause. It doesn't look like victory. It feels like breath. Finally taken. Finally held." That's what life with Nathan became after the press storm faded. Quiet, purposeful, real. We didn't try to go back to what we were. Because what we were didn't exist anymore. I was no longer the girl who had her future taken away in a boardroom. He was no longer the man who thought silence was leadership. We had both been broken. But we had broken open into something more. The Blackwell Clark Center was open 6 months when we brought in our first permanent residents, women and children fleeing domestic violence, uninsured patients in treatment, and young people who had aged out of foster care. Nathan was at every intake. He shook hands, remembered names. He didn't hover or play hero. He listened, and I saw in him a kind of redemption no article could ever write. Some nights, we sat in the back office long after the center closed, not working, just decompressing. One night, I found him staring at an old photo on the wall. It was a black and white shot of the original Blackwell Capitol board. His father stood in the middle, stern and unbending. I spent my whole life trying not to become him, Nathan said quietly. I leaned into the doorway. And did you succeed? He turned. I think I became someone else. Because of you. My chest tightened. He walked over and rested his forehead against mine. I don't want my legacy to be a skyscraper or a stock price. I want it to be this. He gestured around us. A place where people don't get erased. A few weeks later, I got a call from Lenox Hill Hospital. They were offering me a leadership position, a chance to build a patient-centered initiative across multiple hospitals. It was everything I'd trained for, everything I'd dreamed of before it was all taken. But it meant stepping back from the center. From Nathan's side, I told him that night. We were folding laundry in the staff apartment above the clinic, barefoot. Tired, and domestic in a way I never imagined I'd love. I got an offer, I said. He paused mid-fold. Good offer, I nodded. He didn't ask questions. He just said, do it. I blinked. Just like that. He looked at me. I didn't fall in love with you to keep you small. My eyes filled. He smiled gently. Build it. I'll back you. Hell, I'll even do your taxes if you want. We laughed. And I knew. This wasn't a man who needed to prove anything anymore. This was a man who showed up. A month later, we were operating in 3 boroughs. Nathan oversaw infrastructure. I trained staff. We hired from within the communities we served. He stopped calling it charity. Started calling it justice. On our 1-year engagement anniversary, he brought me back to the place where it all started. The clinic rooftop. Same time of day. Same view. He handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a ring. Not the one he proposed with. This one was rougher, handcrafted. I had this made from reclaimed wood from the first intake room we built. He said, I wanted you to have something that felt like us. I cried. Not because it was fancy, but because it was true. We didn't wear perfection. We wore what we survived. What we chose. Each other. That night, lying in bed, he whispered, do you ever miss it? The money? I asked. He chuckled. The control, the ease, the power. I was quiet. Sometimes, I admitted. But then I remember this. I rested my head on his chest. Felt his heartbeat. That the only thing I ever needed, I said, was someone who wouldn't let me disappear. Sometimes, rebuilding isn't about bricks or budgets. It's about looking at someone you thought you lost. And realizing they're still here. Still choosing you. Every single day I used to believe beginnings came with fire. An announcement, a revelation, a bang. But I've learned that the most powerful beginnings, whisper. They don't come with fanfare. They come with breath, with stillness, with the choice to stay. The day we got married was nothing like I imagined. There were no marble staircases, no chandeliers, no designer gowns. We stood in the garden behind the Blackwell Clark Center, just us. A few friends, and a path lined with wildflowers we planted ourselves. I wore white linen. Nathan wore a shirt he hadn't ironed. It was perfect. The guests were simple. Former patients, nurses, volunteers, our team, people who knew the real story, not the headlines. People who had watched us rebuild in real time. People who didn't see a billionaire and a nurse, but two people who had survived each other's sharpest edges. Nathan wrote his vows by hand. No lawyer, no assistant. He stood with shaky fingers, unfolded the paper, and read. I used to believe power made me worthy. Then I met someone who showed me that presence is stronger than power. That love is the hardest thing to earn, and the only thing worth protecting. He looked up. You didn't just save my life, Sienna. You gave it back to me. I cried through mine, because my vow wasn't just to love him. It was to never let him forget what he was capable of. Not as a CEO, but as a man who chose people. Every time. After the ceremony, we danced barefoot on the grass. No music, just the sound of birds and the low hum of people who'd seen too much and still chose joy. We didn't toss a bouquet. We handed it to a girl from the women's shelter who'd just started college. Nathan kissed my forehead. I like this version of us. He said, so do I. Later that evening, we went back to the place it all began. The cliff, the one where my life almost ended. But it wasn't terrifying anymore. It had been transformed, rebuilt with a small bench, lavender bushes, and a plaque that simply read, for those who held on. We sat in silence, watched the sun set behind the trees, and for the first time in forever, there was nothing to run from. The next morning, we took a walk through the city, hand in hand, no bodyguards, no headlines, just the hum of life continuing. He stopped by a small park bench. Do you think we'll ever stop being afraid? He asked. I thought for a moment. No, I said, but I think we'll get better at walking through fear together. He smiled, and then pulled out a folded map, the original blueprint of the center we had sketched on a napkin a year ago. I want to build another, he said. In Chicago, maybe LA. What do you think? I didn't hesitate. I think forever doesn't start with a ceremony. I looked into his eyes. I think it starts with the next choice we make. And we walked forward, not toward perfection, but toward presence, toward the kind of love that chooses. Again and again, not because it's easy, but because it's real. If this story touched your heart, made you believe in second chances, or reminded you that healing is possible, hit that like button to let us know. Leave a comment below. What would you have done if you were in Sienna or Nathan's shoes? And don't forget to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories so you never miss the next powerful tale. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear this today, because stories like these aren't meant to be kept. Heart, until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep believing in love that heals.